What if the way you've been telling your life story reveals the secret to what is holding you back? Stories play an integral part in how we see not only ourselves, but the whole world. Stories are more than just an important part of communication. They also reveal hidden aspects of our inner talk, which can either support us or end up holding us back from the very things we want most in life, without us even realizing it. Join author, mindset coach, and award-winning singer-songwriter Carrie Rowan on her show, Look for the Good, every Monday at 5 a.m. and 5 p.m. when she shares nuggets of wisdom from her internationally best-selling book, Tell a New Story, 5 Simple Steps to Release Your Negative Stories and Bring Joy to Your Life. Carrie's powerful stories and compelling guests will empower you to change how you look at your own life while giving you some powerful tools and tips you can use every day to help you feel better and move yourself closer to the life you've been longing to live.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Look for the Good. I'm your host, Carrie Rowan, mindset strategist and speaker, and I love sharing nuggets of wisdom about the stories that we tell each other, but more importantly, the stories that we tell ourselves. And you can join me and my special guests as we share our personal stories of strength and triumph every week here on Dream Vision 7 Radio Network. You can listen online on your mobile device, in your car, or ask Alexa to play Dream Vision 7 Radio. And tune in every Monday at 5 a.m. and 5 p.m. Eastern Time to get real stories and tips on how to turn your story and your life around. And evolve with us as we unite humankind with universal love. Hello, everybody. All my listeners, welcome back. I'm so excited to be here. We have Peggy Sullivan in her home studio waiting in the wings. Hello, Peggy.
Hello. Nice to see you, Carrie.
So good to see you too. And before we dive in, you guys know I love talking about stories, right? And Peggy has some incredible stories she's going to share. And a lot of times we have this story in our head that we don't even realize. And I notice, and Peggy is, we're going to dive into this, is we all have this story that sort of says something like, I need to be busy because that's how I prove my worth, right? So it's kind of hidden, especially for women, especially women in midlife. We've been so trained to provide for everybody else and do all the things, and we keep doing all the things. And now it's time for us, but we still have that story in our head. And that story can really hold us back. That story says that I have to do all these things. I have to always be busy. I can't take any time for myself. I don't know what self-care is. Maybe it's getting my nails done here or there, but we're going to dive into it. What is that? And why do we all do it? And what can we do to get rid of that? Because it's no longer serving us, right? If we were eating something or doing something that didn't serve us, we'd throw it out, right, Peggy?
Yeah, I mean, we always think that busy is better. Busyness equals success. Work hard, you do well. I mean, I grew up in that environment. I had an immigrant father, and he was always like, work hard, you'll do well. But the reality is there's a price tag for our busyness. I know for me, when I was at that age where everything was coming together and I was balancing it all, I was a career woman with a fairly successful career, and I was married, had a young child at home, and I had a series of wake-up calls that really made me want to take a step back from everything that was going on in my life and really, uncover the sheets and take a look at, is busy better or not? And for me, I mean, one of the wake-up calls I had, talk about telling stories, but this one is real, was one day I came home from work, I was exhausted, I was ravenous, and I ended up eating cat food for dinner. While I thought I gave him cat food, I actually ate the cat food and gave him the pistachio nuts. And that triggered a whole series of events that really proved to me that I was in a mindless haze. I was on autopilot. I wasn't thinking. And then I did a lot of market research to really come to understand that this busyness sets us up for failure. The stats are consistent. They all point in the same direction. Busy isn't better. And so for me, my quest is about teaching people a framework, a path that takes them off of this really hustle hamster wheel that we're all seem to be caught on and quite frankly, don't know how to get off.
Oh, I love that. That's so true. We can't get off it. We don't know how to get off. It's going too fast, but we've created it, right? So there is a way to get off. And do you mind if I share your bio with them? Because I think it's
Sure.
really great. Okay. So Peggy Sullivan's a business addict in recovery. I love that. She's a keynote speaker, author, and researcher. Her TEDx with millions of views and best-selling book Beyond Busyness has inspired audiences worldwide to overcome busyness and achieve peak performance without sacrificing well being. And that is what we need, Peggy. It's what the world needs. And that wake up call for you, I know what you're talking about when you said, and I even wrote it down, that mindless haze, because it's busyness, but inside that business is also anxiety and stress because the mind's going so fast. So fast
Mhm.
as our body's going, right, doing things, our mind's equally going that fast. And I always say, nicely, I try to say stress, makes us not smart. But, other people might say, and I've seen it before, stress makes us stupid, right? I just don't like that word. But it's so true because we're not even thinking with that mind. We're just operating out of sheer habit, adrenaline rush. So talk about that. How do you know the difference between when you're busy in this whirlwind and when you're just trying to get things done in a rational way that's not crazied?
Well, I'm a busyness addict in recovery. So for me, I'm a type A personality, an overachiever. I love getting stuff done. I love checking the boxes. And it was until I realized that busyness is addictive. I mean, the reality is the American Psychiatric Association says that busyness is anything that keeps us from our normal behavior. And for me, busyness is like an itch. It's a mosquito bite. I just got to scratch it. And so I worked really hard to get off this hamster wheel by having a go-to process, much like AA has a go-to process and they have their rules. I have a process that when I get a little carried away, which can happen, I am able to go back to the process and it keeps me really, really grounded. And quite honestly, my overall sense of joy and happiness and fun, it just improves, as well as my bottom line work. My work is better because I'm more focused and I'm more attuned to exactly what I'm working on.
Yeah, I love that. That's really cool. And let's back up even for a minute. Let's talk about what did the symptoms of busyness look like? Because people are like, yeah, I'm busy, but I got to get this stuff done. How can I not be busy? Like, what's the difference between, having a to-do list that you meander through the day and being stuck in that crazy frame of mind where you're eating cat food for dinner?
Yeah, I would say there are a number of things depending on your lifestyle, but an overstuffed schedule is a really common thing that most people fall into, just totally overstuffing their schedule. So when the unexpected happens, which it does all the time, you can't deal with it because you didn't plan it out in your schedule.
Mhm.
Or not taking any time for self care. So you're running on empty, and that dental appointment that was just for a cleaning 6 months ago, you canceled 3 times already. All of a sudden is like, oh my God, I'm not taking care of my teeth. And there are a ton of them. Are you multitasking? Are you trying to do 10 things at once? Because multitasking takes 2.5 times as long, and our mistakes are riddled. And even the email rabbit hole. I mean, how many times have you gotten up in the morning where the first thing you do is you go to email? You don't get your cup of coffee, you don't change, you don't shower, you just go to email, and before you know it, you're sucked in, right? And
Yeah.
you're just going from one email to another and checking your calendar, and before you know it, the time is gone.
Yeah, it's a total time sink for sure. You said a lot of really important things. You said, not overstuffing your schedule. The thing about the dentist, I was feeling guilty because I must have rescheduled my dentist appointment. And I finally went the other day and she goes, "Oh, Carrie, do you know that it's been over a year?" I was like, "Wait, what? No, I go every 6 months." She's like, "It's been over a year." So guilty. Um, but I did go and I said to myself, come on, this is something that you can't neglect. This is really important. When you see it in the schedule, just make time to go. Because what happens is then we start rescheduling, but now we're just procrastinating. right? So now I'm just
Mhm.
putting that off, or dinner with a friend. Oh gosh, I'm so stressed. I just can't do it, or this, right? We just put it off for another time, but we're going to be busy on that day too. So, what's your philosophy? Do you think that we should just go and do those things? Like, how do we prioritize?
For me, it's you prioritize what's important to you. You prioritize around your values, the things that are most important to you. If your career and career success is important, well, then you prioritize that. If family is important, then you prioritize that. But you pick your priorities. And the big trick of this all is eliminating the low value activities. And that is the beginning of my performance by design framework is eliminating low value activities, the things we do habitually that take a lot of time, take a lot of energy, and don't get us to the finish line. And it can be something as simple as a interruption. I mean, the other day I was working on a spreadsheet and I was moving along and my door was shut and everything was great. And my husband knocks on the door and he wants to come in. And I think it's important because my door was shut and he tells me we're out of ketchup. Well, that wasn't really all that important. But yet, when I went back to my work, I was like, where did I leave off? What formula was I using? I mean, I lost my focus. And there are so many things that take us off of the path of productivity and purpose and value. And we need to get more disciplined to learn how not to fall into
Mm,
those busy traps. And there are a lot
yeah.
of them.
Yeah, I love that, busy traps. But you also lose something that's super hard to get back, and that's momentum. And I know, and you wrote a book too, but as I was writing my book, you couldn't interrupt me because you get that train of thought and you're on the verge of the idea coming together and somebody blows into your office, right? So that would happen to me a lot. It's that momentum that you lose, and sometimes you can get it back, but you can't always get that momentum back when you're in that flow of creativity and you're just one with, yourself, and it feels so good. We can lose hours and hours, but if for me, if it wasn't for the Pomodoro method, I don't think I would have had my book written, using my phone and my timer,
I
right?
hear you loud and clearly. For me, getting my focus and my concentration back is as simple as a 90-second happiness ritual. Um, I call them happiness rituals. It's step two in my process. It's called mojo making, but it's about creating intentional acts of joy. We tend to think that happiness is a destination, a thing. I'll be happy when I get the job, when I get married, when I get a new car, and it's just macro moments. But the reality is that happiness is such an amazing super emotion. When we're happy, our brain lights up like a Christmas tree, and it gives us more energy, more ability to focus. We're more charismatic, and the list goes on and on. And so what I do is I'll do a happiness ritual, and it can be something as silly as having a dance party of one.
Mhm.
It could be eating a piece of dark chocolate and smelling it and really absorbing the odor and the aroma and the taste of it. There are so many things we can do that take 90 seconds that just kind of empty out our brain and give us the ability to dive back in. And I just think in our society, we think happiness, that's a soft skill. I don't need to have, that's a nice to have at work, not a must have. But when people are happy, they have so much more energy and so much more ability to focus.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. And I always am, teaching that to my clients as well. And what you said, a lot of really great stuff there. And you also, I heard weaved in there was mindfulness, right? I heard that weaved in with the taking the chocolate and the appreciating and smelling and using all your senses is very mindfulness based, right? So you kind of have everything weaved in there, which is beautiful. And it's also a gratitude practice within that happiness practice, right? It's, hey, I'm grateful. I'm going to take these 5 minutes for myself. I love that example that you talk about in your TED talk about going up to get the piece of chocolate because I always do that. It's my little afternoon thing, right? I have little stuff in the morning I do and little afternoon. And that's how we like kind of play with our minds, right? Because our mind just wants to keep going. But it's like, okay, do this one thing that's really hard for you. And then you get the special, mojo making moment. I love that.
Yeah, and quite honestly, you can ignite the superpowers of happiness in 60 seconds and get all of the neurological benefits. And it is neurological. If you were to look at your brain, when you're happy underneath an MRI, it would light up like a Christmas tree. And that's where the energy and the focus comes from. So it's extremely biological. And so you can use your biology and trigger it in different ways. That's why exercise is such a energy giver.
Yeah. Oh, you stole my next line. That is exactly what I was just going to talk about is combining your body, right? Because I always tell my clients the fastest way to change your mind is to change your body, right? So when we move our body differently, well, you just got up out of your desk, you walked into the kitchen to get your piece of chocolate, right? You are moving your body differently. Started walking, which swinging our arms definitely increases our energy and makes our energies all line back up. So I'm a big believer in getting up and moving your body, and I love that. I actually even have, you said a dance party for one, and that was on one of my free gifts for a long time as a quick way to change your mind by changing your body, right? So there's a lot of great stuff in that message that what you're saying that it seems simple, but there's a lot that you're doing biologically, physiologically, right? And
Yeah.
neurologically to get you to that quick point. But I feel like people get tripped up because it seems so simple.
Yeah, it is simple, but where it gets complicated, I think, is when you're trying to change your mood, when you know you're not in a good place and you don't know what to do, how to change it. And I like to think of our mood as, there are three types of people in the world. There are the doom and gloomers, and they walk into a room and they suck the energy right out of it, and nobody wants to be with them. Nobody wants them on our team. And then there are the middle roaders where they're slightly optimistic, but they're kind of in the middle of the road and they don't hurt, but they don't always help. And then there's the mojo makers, right? That walk into the room with a big smile and a ton of energy. And that energy is charisma. It's contagious. And then everybody. So I always like to think about what can I do to make this situation better? How can I walk into this room and make everybody's day just a little bit better? And sometimes it's as easy as a big smile.
Absolutely. Yes, I talk about that in my book as well. And it's bringing that everywhere you go, right? It's like into that meeting or even into the grocery store. We don't realize that one little act of smiling or saying hello. I was just up in my neighborhood walking before we jumped on, and I always say hello to people. I don't care where I am, right? I'm always say hello or good morning. And it's amazing. Like you could have just brightened somebody's day. You don't realize it, but it feels good to them. But it also feels good to you. It feels good to the giver. You're giving something beautiful to somebody and it makes us feel better. And I love that reciprocal relationship that you're creating with somebody. You're just opening the door with a warm smile, like, hey, hi, how are you? I'm approachable, you know?
Yeah, I believe in helpers high, right? Like I
Hmm.
love to do random acts of kindness, especially when nobody's expecting it. Walking into Dunkin' Donuts and buying coffee for the person before you and standing by the door, watching them be like, who just bought coffee for me? And how they smile and how it delights them. And, or, baking cookies for a neighbor, whatever, something unexpected. And then you feel so good about the help that you provided and how you made impact on that particular person. So there's definitely something huge to be said for helpers high.
Yeah, I love that. It's like that old saying about if you want to ease your own heartache is to ease somebody else's, right? Ease somebody else's heartache is easing your own. And it's true. It's so beautiful. And again, it's simple to do. It's about intention. Setting that intention. You set the intention, hey, I want to do a random act of kindness today because it does. It feels good to do and it feels great for the receiver. Oh, and guess what? It makes the world a better place to be.
So, I mean, I'm speechless because I so agree with absolutely everything you just said. And can you imagine what the world would look like if we all did random acts of kindness? It just, would be monumental.
Yeah.
Just one random act of kindness every day, it just really would change the gloom and the doom and the frightening and a lot of people are struggling right now, and it's because they're just so stuck in this moment in time where they're overthinking everything, and maybe luck hasn't been traveling with them and the economy is tight, and there's certainly a lot of hate going on in the world, and so it's so easy to just get drifted away in all of that nastiness instead of focusing in on the good.
Yes. Amen. Focusing in on the good and looking for the good. And we're going to break quick, but when we come back, let's talk a little bit more about that and how we can actually train our brains to look for the good. All right, everybody, don't go anywhere. I know you're loving everything Peggy's saying. We'll be right back on Look for the Good. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Look for the Good. We're having this incredible conversation with Peggy, and we're so on the same page with a lot of stuff. And we were just talking about looking for the good. And here's the thing: we like the neuroscience too. Well, put a little bit of that in there because I geek out on that. But our brains are all wired to look for what's wrong. Why? It thinks it's keeping us safe, but we know that it's not. So we have to learn how to decipher that and tell it to shh, shh, be quiet. I got this, right? Especially when we're about to do something different in our lives. But let's talk about, because I think people get hung up because we can see the problems. They're right in front of us. There's so many problems, but it's all about what we focus on. Let's chat a little bit about that. If we're focused on the problems all the time, how can we come up with a solution?
Yeah, I have a real life story about it, and that is, my sister is terminal, and it's heart wrenching and heartbreaking, her situation in general. And whenever I go see her, she's really struggling to breathe and to walk, and all these things we take for granted. And for the longest time, I was just like wallowing in that and feeling sorry for her, and feeling sorry that my sister was in this state. And then all of a sudden it hit me that I can't control that. But what I can do is I can every day try to make her life a little bit better, and call her up all the time and cheer her up and put her in a good mood and make her laugh and do funny, fun things with her. And I think a lot of times that helps us, get through some of the ugly stuff. I remember when my mom passed away, I had this amazing connecting moment with her that made her passing easier, because we were just like connected, and it was a moment I'll remember the rest of my life. So I do think that when death or darkness is at your doorstep, you try to think about how you can do something to change your perspective on that.
I love that. It's so true. It's like because we get so wrapped up and what can we control? Can we control that? No, we can't control whether somebody leaves or goes or when they go, but you controlled the only thing that you could control, which was to reconnect with your mom, to connect up with her and have those moments together before she passed that you will remember. That is such a gift to have that
Mhm.
moment. So that is a beautiful story, Peggy. I love that. We don't always get those moments in that gift. So that's beautiful.
Yeah, I was at the yoga studio the other day, and it was pouring rain, not just a little bit of rain, but like those drops that are so incredibly huge. And I watched somebody walk out of the hot yoga studio and run into the parking lot and just stand there in the rain, feeling the rain. And she just stood there and said nothing and let the rain just feel delicious on her skin and cool her off. And it was an amazing thing to watch, because there are so many moments like that. We could say, oh, it's raining. I can't believe it's raining so hard. My car is over there and blah, blah, blah. But instead, this woman chose to just dance in the rain, and do it when nobody's looking, do it for her.
And I love that because like you said, we'd be so busy, we'd be gotta go out of yoga, right? And which is the funny part because it's totally the opposite of what you're supposed to do in yoga, and run to our car and run to our next blah 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 blah. But I love that she took that moment right there to appreciate the rain, love the rain. Imagine how that felt after coming out of hot yoga. That felt delicious.
Yeah, and what is even more delicious was watching her do it and the smile and the utter delight. I mean, talk about happiness being contagious. In that moment, I felt so joyful. And, we
Yeah.
need more moments like that.
We do because it is contagious and so is negativity, right? That's the problem. Negativity, all that yucky stuff is contagious as well. So why not be the light? I love that mantra. Just be the light. I'm going to be the light because it's good for me. It's good for everybody around me. It changes. You can change the highest. I once heard one time that said that the person with the highest vibe controls the room. But we often think it's the other way. Oh, there's that person again. That dark and right? That dark and gloomy one that you mentioned before. It's like an Eeyore, right? Here comes Eeyore. And they come into the room with the cloud over the head. And we're like, oh, and we almost succumb to it. We expect it, right? But if we can walk in with our light shining so bright that Eeyore doesn't bother us anymore, nothing can get in because we now own the space with our higher vibe. And that's the way it
Mhm.
really goes.
Yeah, and there's also the choose not to engage. I have a elderly aunt who is gloom and doom every single conversation. And I really respect the elderly and I love to support them. And so for years, I would call her every single day and talk about sucking the life out of me. I mean, I'd be so sad and she'd be so mean on these calls. And then one day I thought to myself, why am I calling her every day when she sucks the life out of me? Maybe I just call her once a week. And maybe I tell her, say, look, I'm struggling to talk with you more frequently because you're so negative and it has an effect on me. So, I started telling her whenever we're in a conversation, she's putting somebody down or she's negative, I will call it out to her and say, look, this is not a discussion I want to have. Let's move on to another topic or we'll talk next week.
I love that. It's a beautiful way to set a boundary. And also, I love that you've awakened her to the fact that that's bringing you down. Because I feel like it's one of the steps in my book about your story, which is the O, the STORY in my acronym of story. You don't realize the outcome of your story. The outcome of your story is really powerful. And all those little stories she was telling you, the outcome was it was making you feel bad, right? So I love that you told her that because a lot of times people don't realize the outcome of their stories. And when somebody else can bring that awareness, you're actually bringing your light to that situation, right? And I bet it changed everything.
Yeah, and I think there's also the reality of just settling in and figuring things out. I often think about my grandfather who was in the Holocaust. He was in a concentration camp. And when he got in there, he thought about the only thing he wanted in life was to survive. If he could survive. And so he started to think about how. And as a little girl, he would tell me that how became the infrastructure of his values.
Mhm.
And for him, it was about human connection. He'd
Mm.
find a tribe within that ugly, damp barn that he could talk to, and they could all rise up and help each other through this horrible situation. And then the other thing that he really focused on was self-care. At first he thought, oh my God, it's so selfish for me to grab the food first. And oh my God, I took the coat off of, somebody else and whatever it was. But it was just the how to his why. And so I do think that if we can get back to our core values and realize that they are the how to our whys, we're going to get past this thing that we're in that I call a purpose crisis. And, people just, letting chaos reign and not having a sense of purpose.
It's so true. I like that. I wrote that down. Purpose crisis. It is a purpose crisis because I feel like purpose is so important. I always say to my kids too, like the opposite of like happiness is, obviously people think about depression, but truly it's the opposite of depression is purpose. It's not happiness. Happiness is elusive. You talked about it. This moment of going to get it's beautiful and great, but we can't be in happiness all the time. But purpose, we can certainly step into our purpose at all times. My microphone's having a little ghosty moment. It keeps moving on me. And so I feel like that's so important that you've wrapped our values in. And my gosh, if your grandfather can find a way, it reminds me of that Viktor Frankl book, right? A Man's Search for Meaning. If they
Yeah.
can find a way to be there and embrace and look for something good in that situation, it makes me feel like I have absolutely no reason or any excuse to not find something good in my life today.
Yeah, there's so much good around us. And, I think being crystal clear on what your values are and making sure that you live them every day. I do this thing that I call the values report card. And my four values are self care and energy management, growth, human connection, and authenticity. And I judge myself, I grade myself with a little post it note at the end of the day. Did I do these things? And usually I didn't do one of them to the best of my ability. So then I'll focus the next day on saying, what can I do better for more self care? Or what new thing can I learn? Or, how can I be more accepting of somebody else's authenticity and realize it's okay to disagree?
I love that. And you know what's so interesting too about what you said is self-care because I feel like, and I love the grading. It reminds me of this Brendan Burchard. It's sort of a time tracker that he has, and he always makes you ask those questions at the end of the day and reflect. And then on Sunday, you reflect on the week. We don't take the time because we're so busy to reflect on the things that are important. How many people actually think about their values like that, Peggy? Like, I'm going to say less than 10%.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm about to do a TEDx in Zimbabwe, and the title of
Wow.
that talk is Why Time Management is Failing Us and Why Values Management Can't. And the reality is when you align your decisions with your values, you're doing the things that light you up, the things that make you happy, the things that make a world a better place. And I just think that we've gotten to a point where, values are so difficult to discuss. People struggle to articulate them. And so we just kind of walk away from it, or we pick lame ones that everybody has, and it really isn't, aligned with truly what's important to us. So I think it's really important to define your values, be crystal clear on what those are, and live your life according to your values.
I love that, and I fully embrace that, talk about that myself, and again, it comes back we're value poor right now in this country. We've lost a lot of our values, and I think it's tied into this busyness addiction. Like you said, people don't even know. What's your top 3 values? If you ask people on the street, I'd love to do that little survey, right? What are your top 3 values? I wonder if what people would say or if they've ever taken the time to know what they are. And this is also why, I love, you said self-care. For me, self-care constitutes meditation. I go through these little cards every day that remind me of what I want to do, what my intentions are, who I am, who I want to be to other people in my life. And it's like finding that time, that's what people get a little confused. I mean, they think self-care is, maybe it is going to get your nails done, but it's not that simple. It's really giving yourself the time. Get in the bathtub or go for the walk without listening to anything for a moment to just feel what you're feeling, right? It's really carving it out too. And I love what you said about time management because if that's not a value, it doesn't get into the calendar somehow. And I always tell my clients that you got to put it into the calendar. You got to put the quiet time, you got to put the creative time, you got to put that stuff into your calendar or it's not going to get done.
Yeah, I mean, we use time management to manage our calendar, to manage our ability to get tasks done, but there's not much in there that talks about values and value alignment. And that's why I truly believe that while time management is an $18 billion industry, it's not the end all be all. It's what we're using, but we need to get back to understanding our values and what I call values management.
I love values management, and I feel like that busts time management every time because values management expands your time. When we're just trying to manage time, it's this elusive thing. But when we manage, like you're saying, through your values, you can actually expand time. You can bust through all those myths that aren't really true, anyways, because now you're doing what's most important to you. And time doesn't really matter. Time takes care of itself. When you're getting those things done, don't you feel like $1,000,000 that you could just keep going and get everything done?
So true. It's like you're OVDing on happiness and energy and feeling really good about what you're accomplishing, which is really why values are the how to our purpose, our why.
Yeah, so true. And if you don't, it's that big why that makes the hugest difference. And a lot of people don't take the time again because we're so busy to try to get something done. But why? Why is that important? That's the thing that wakes you up in the middle of the night with a great idea. That's the thing that drives you when you want to just push it all off your calendar and run out of the building because you just have had enough. That why has got to be real concrete in your mind. You've got to think about it every single day when you walk into whatever it is that you're trying to do, right? Whatever your mission is.
Yeah, and that's a lot of why organizations are struggling right now because people aren't feeling a sense of purpose in the workplace.
Yeah.
And that's a real opportunity for organizations because when people have a sense of purpose, their end product, their byproduct, the organizational metrics, the engagement, it all rises. So it's kind of like we tend to think of values as the soft stuff, happiness as the soft stuff. But really, if you want bottom line performance, you need to dig into that because who skims on something they believe in?
Yeah.
Almost nobody. If you believe
Mhm.
in something, you're passionate about it, you give it your all. And
Mhm.
that's why I think values is really beginning to be lost in the workplace.
Yeah, and it is so essential because when you're all working together, you're creating more momentum too, because you're all working together for this purpose. And when that purpose is bigger than the whole, and then there's another bigger reason that you're helping the world in some great way, whether it is technology or whatever it is, healthcare, when that purpose is so big and everybody feels it, it's amazing how that momentum, it just becomes a great place to work because everybody's focused, right? And so I love what you're talking about. We're going to break real quick. We'll be right back with Peggy. Don't go anywhere. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Look for the Good. I'm here with Peggy Sullivan having this incredible conversation. We're talking about purpose. Let's talk a bit about that bigger reason, right? Like when companies come in and we're feeling like leaders maybe don't have that purpose, or maybe they do, or their values, but they've not, communicated it properly. How much can that impact the people who work there, positively or negatively?
Yeah, it's totally bottom line oriented. I love to tell the story about a friend of mine who headed up a healthcare marketing sales department. And it was during a time where there was huge opportunity for lots of sales. And so this gentleman, he pushed his employees really, really hard. And one day he was thinking they're not getting enough done. So he asked them to all work overtime and they're sitting in the conference room. And then all of a sudden the security guard walks in and says, "Hey guys, you don't have windows, but there's a snowstorm going out there and nobody's going anywhere." And this manager at first thinks to himself, "Yay, this is great. We're going to get a ton done." But then he looks around the room and how tired his group is. And he has this epiphany that his department has lost human connection. They don't know each other in terms of their family, what they like to do outside of work, what are their pain points inside of work. And so he totally changed the trajectory of that conversation, 7 hours stuck in a conference room. And he started doing that more human connection within the workplace. And lo and behold, his metrics improved.
Isn't that incredible? But it's like, of course, we know that, right? We know that, but again, we're stuck in that busyness. We've got a big meeting with the board, the stockholders, the this, the that, the this, all these things that they were thinking of. And then they forget that the very core of the business are the humans. We have no business without the humans.
Yeah, yeah. And I think we forget as leaders that it's our job to give everybody around us the tools they need to be successful. And they're happier when we do, and the bottom line is better, and it's better for the organization. And there are just some things that you just don't cut out of your schedule. And that's when it gets back to don't overstuff your schedule. Because when somebody knocks on your door and says, "I'm stuck, I need help," you can unstick them. And what a beautiful thing that is. And if you're in back to back meetings and you don't have time for that, that's not good.
Yeah, that's not good. And I love that open door policy. And you said something really important. You said giving the people the tools that they need, giving your employees the tools that they need to be better. And that is what you and I both do. We go to companies, we get on stages or we jump on seminars, we get on Zooms, and we teach the employees real actionable things that they can walk away with and be better, not only at work, but in their personal life. And I
Hmm.
love that. I love that you do that. And it's just something to really embrace because it is one person at a time, one company at a time, one organization, one leader at a time.
Yeah, you can really make a difference when you give somebody the tools they need to succeed. And then it gets to be almost contagious, where then that person starts to do that to all the people around us, and we're just kinder and supporting of each other. I mean, we all have different talents and skills. So, not everybody can do everything. And when we are in an environment where we can ask for help. It's not a negative thing or a sign of weakness to ask for help, but it actually is a good thing because then you can learn how to approach something that you're struggling with.
Yeah. And I love it top down too, right? A leader who sees the skill that somebody else has and he's like, hey, can you teach me how to you do that? Like that goes so long. Like nobody's good enough that they know everything in this world. There's just way too much to know. Right. And I love that culture of the like, hey, you can come and tell me everything kind of a culture with the executives. Right. So it's an open door policy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that really changes everything. So let's talk a little bit about culture because a lot of what we do really does enhance the culture. It enhances employee happiness. You know, talk to me a little bit about what do you think most companies and what do you see out there right now are running into with their biggest problem with the culture? We talked about values, we talked about the big why, and wrapping all that in. What else are you seeing out there?
Yeah, I mean, it's a rapidly changing environment, and what's going on with the tariffs affects many, many, many businesses, and it makes it more difficult for them. And AI is a good thing, a bad thing, it's a whatever thing, but there are all this noise and all these distractions, and they keep us away from what is meaningful and what is important. And so, I think solve the problems you can, stay away from the problems that you don't have an ability, to solve. But there's so much that we can do that we've got to, shift our mindset and start to think about things just a little bit differently. How can I make this work? How can I do the impossible?
Mm-hmm.
How can I help somebody else with a tough situation? I mean, almost every problem has a solution. You just need to figure out a creative strategy to be able to deliver on that.
Yeah, I love that. And really adopting, that mindset, instead of people dive into that low vibe of the fear. And there's a lot of reason to fearful, right? To feel fearful. And it's like, how do we lift people out of that? How do we shift their mindset? And I think a mutual friend of ours would say curiosity, right? And
Mhm.
we're talking about Deb Clary and um really getting yourself to ask better questions. You said that you mentioned asking questions, but it's asking really good questions because it's good in, good out, right? You ask a crappy question, guess what? You're going to get a terrible answer. So it's when we learn to ask ourselves better questions and get in that mode of, hmm, I wonder if, I wonder what would happen. Or questions like, what else is possible here? What am I missing about this situation that could be possible, right? Looking at it from all sides of it with a different lens on changes everything.
Absolutely. I like you, I speak a lot, and I think for many times as I step onto a stage with big audience, the fear would kick in. And I would, when I felt it, I felt the excitement and I felt that I would always say to myself, fear or fun? What do you choose? Fear or fun? I want to have fun. So stop fearing because you're not going to have any fun if all you're doing is nervous and, it's an emotion and you can control this. So just go out there, do the best you can and have fun doing it.
Yeah, I love that. It's just a little flip too, because those two emotions are so similar, right? The anxiety and the excitement are just a breath away. It's just a definition in our mind. And I love how you flip that for yourself. Like, hey, I'm just going to go have fun. And when we can be in that zone, we don't even have to think about our notes or what we're talking about because all the goodness just comes right out of us. We already know how to do it. We already know what to say, right? I come out with my guitar. So, sometimes that's a one more level of nervousness, right? Because now I got to perform and blah, blah, blah. So it's like, wait, I'm just going to go and be me because there's nobody else that can be me. Nobody else is going to be Carrie Rowan like I'm going to be her. Right. And when we remember that and put ourselves, I love that little shift. It's really, really powerful.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's our job to go and light up the audience, to give them something of value, to make them feel
Yeah.
and to be inspired to behave just a little bit differently. That's the job of a speaker. And quite honestly, what a privilege it is to be a speaker and a coach and all of those things. It truly is one of the biggest privileges in the world, I think, to be able to have that ability, capacity to help others find a more comforting, better way.
I love that. And, I always say it's an honor. It's an honor to interview you here today. It's an honor to bring all these people on and share their personal stories. It's an honor to know that you are going to be responsible for stepping on that stage and empowering other people, for changing their minds. Like you said, just a little bit. It's not, yes, some people have amazing, huge aha moments, but even just a little, I'm going to take that one thing that Carrie or Peggy said and I'm going to put it in my back pocket. I'm going to pull that out next time. I'm going to try that at home. I'm going to practice that little one thing because it's how many times you walk out of a big, huge seminar, and what do you remember? They remember when you move them emotionally. And I love that you said that.
Yeah, storytelling is just such a powerful thing, and I've really leaned into storytelling. And the other thing about storytelling for me that is such a gift is I find myself talking about people I love who are no longer here, and it keeps them alive, and it warms my heart. And it
Yeah.
brings them back and their stories and the values that they taught me. And I found for me, my parents are dead, my grandparents are dead, my sister is sick. So having that power to keep these people alive is just the most magnificent thing. I closed my speech with a story about my mother. And let me tell you, every time I tell that story, I go back to that time, that place over 30 years ago, where my heart was just so full and I cried and I just felt so overwhelmed with her love and her connection with me. And I feel that on stage, if somebody said to me, "You're crying on stage," I'm like, "Yeah, it's a real moment." I don't want to be sad. I just want to tell you what's possible.
Yeah, I love that. It's so funny because and my mom's still living, thank goodness, but my dad's not, and my whole book was really dedicated a lot to him and my sister as well. And I close with my mother's story, and there is really not a lot of dry eyes in the room because it touches because everybody's got a mom, right? Here or not.
Mhm.
And it touches something deep within them. And that's where the transformation happens. If you can turn that story around of all the things that happened that were probably not good, and then, throw it back at them and say, okay, what are you going to change? What's your new story going to be? How are you going to tell a new story? That's a pivotal, profound moment. And that's why we're moved because we feel their movement. It's a reciprocal when you have an audience. And I learned after being on stages for decades, it's a reciprocal. The audience gives me as much as I give them, which is what you're just saying, which is why you're feeling their emotion and it's making you cry. It's beautiful, Peggy. It's a beautiful exchange.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Amen.
And I love that we get to empower the people. We get to remind them of who they are because in the busyness, we forget who we are.
Yeah, I mean, I know that I think a lot about my grandfather, the story I told when he was in a concentration camp. But whenever he wanted to change his energy, he would literally walk in a circle and do a mantra, I am okay, I have everything I need. I am okay, I have everything I need. I am okay, I have everything I need. And just say it over and over and over again until he felt it in his bones. And that got him through. And who doesn't have the opportunity to walk in a tiny little circle and say a mantra to yourself, right? It's
Yes.
just the profound things in life are not that complicated. They're actually quite simple.
They really are. And it's so funny that you said that, because if you could see my note right here, it says mantra right here, because I was going to ask you. And then you said mantra. So I'm going to go back to asking you, what is your mantra, Peggy? What little thing do you say all the time that helps you in a moment? I love that story of your grandfather, and I love that you're carrying his legacy on. It's beautiful.
Yeah, well, I kind of carry that on with, I get up out of bed and I say, I am okay. I have everything I need, and I got everything I need to have an amazing day. I'll say, I got this. I got this. I got this. No matter what's going on, I got it. And today's going to be amazing. So took a little cue from my grandfather.
I love it. And you can borrow that, everybody. Borrow Peggy's mantra. I love that. My mantra I'll share is, you guys probably already know, but things are always working out for me. That's my mantra. And it's true. And when you believe that, and I love that yours was handed down through the years from your grandfather, and you can believe that because everything is okay. And what he was really doing is bringing himself back into the present moment, bringing himself back into himself instead of that fear body that we were really not, and reminding himself, hey, look, I am okay. I'm still here. I'm okay. I'm going to be okay. And that is such a powerful story, Peggy. I can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing all your beautiful stories with us here today on Look for the Good.
Oh, you are quite welcome. This is the good stuff. I encourage anybody who is having time poverty, reach out to me. I'd love to help because it will exponentially change your life when you can learn how to manage your time poverty.
I love that. Thank you. And you can find Peggy at Peggy Sullivan, just like you'd think it would be spelled, PeggyySullivan, speaker.com. Go visit Peggy. And remember, everybody, it is never too late to live your best story. Be well.
Thanks for tuning in to Look for the Good with your host, Carrie Rowan, best-selling author and mindset coach. Join us every Monday at 5 a.m. and 5 p.m. right here at Dream Vision 7 Radio Network. If you weren't able to catch an episode, no worries. Just visit our website to find all the archived episodes of Look for the Good on demand, so you don't miss a thing. And remember, it's never too late to live your best story. For additional resources or to find out about how you can work with Carrie directly, visit carrierowan.com for more details.